the YouTube. And we should now be live on YouTube. And that is great because I put in a poll before we got started for what I should rig and animate this character in. And the options are Blender or Unreal. While I pull out my tablet because I need to do a little bit of weight painting first. So if there's anybody watching who has not voted for that yet, there's 2 votes at the moment. And we're 50-50. So do go ahead and vote for whatever you would like me to see do this animation in. So I can make that decision in a moment. Either way works for me, to be honest. It's a little quicker, maybe, in some ways to do it in Blender, because everything that's just a bone is just a bone, right? You don't need to set up any stuff for that, but it's altogether also not that big a deal. So, wait, is this one mesh? I thought this was 2 separate meshes. What's going on here? Hold on. Yeah, that's 2 separate meshes. So that's the basic idea here, and let's see if there's any more votes coming in toward either Blender or Unreal while I go ahead and do this, because we need to go to. You don't have any vertex groups. That's not great. Let's see. Can we easily copy over some vertex groups or something? Maybe we can. See, and here we have the top arm top R, and we also have the same one for L. I think if I just name a vertex group after both of those, that should then automatically apply those weights to that. And why? Oh, it's object name. No. Actually, I very much specifically don't want that. Hold on. Do I just double tap? I just double tap. Okay. And then we name this one L. And actually, we also want a. Oh, that's a good point. We want a couple more vertex groups here. I'm not entirely sure what we're gonna. Oh, that's not what I want to do yet. You know, actually, what we'll do is I will just try to see if I can parent with empty groups. Will I just make a bunch of vertex groups for? It will. Okay, that's all that I needed. It was already parented to it, but now now it has the proper vertex groups as well, so we can actually work with that. Let's go into edit mode first, select all of this, and then we want to have spine number 4, I believe, is what this one is. Let me check. That's spine bone number 4. We want to just set the weight for those to 1 for the entire thing. So it moves entirely with that, and then for the rest we're going to do this with weight painting, and that's mostly for the arms. So we have, let's see, just a little bit of weight added for the arms. There's no updates yet on the poll. That's okay. If it's just 50-50, I'm going to decide. Which is honestly probably the best option for me. It's just let me decide. I'll be happy with that. I'm happy either way, to be honest. It's not that big a deal. And then arm top L. We'll do the same thing here over on this side. Just make sure that it's like all the way red over here. And then we have a little bit of a gradient fall off. And then probably what we want to do actually is we probably want to have spine 5 just a little bit of deformation around here as well. And we probably want to do roughly the same for the head too. I'm not entirely sure about that last one though. Let me check what this feels like when actually moving these things around. So when we move this, that moves the way we expect it to, but then when we move just the head, the cloth should move around a little bit. That's... should actually move around more. Didn't expect that. It should actually move around more. Who would have thought? Let's go back into weight painting here and add for, I suppose, mostly the head, a little bit more movement to the cloth. So it moves around a little bit more when the head moves. That seems about right. And then I don't think spine 5 is actually doing anything, but we might as well add a little bit more weight to that one as well. And I also want to just move around a couple of vertices a little bit after we... oh yeah, no, that definitely... so in this direction it kind of does what I expect it to do, right? And then in this direction it's clipping through quite a lot still. To be fair, we're probably never going to have this thing move this much without also moving the bones under it. But just to be sure. Yeah, we probably actually shouldn't do this now that I think about it. Maybe. So how... hold on. If this is already weighted at 1, how is this, like, cloth over it, moving more than a weight of 1? Oh, because it's not moving with the head is the issue. Okay, that makes a lot of sense then. There seems to be a change in the poll votes, so I think we're going to be sticking with Blender for the time being. Okay. And now we go back to this one and we paint this in ever so slightly more. Again, this is mostly worrying about things that aren't actually going to like ever happen to begin with, because we're never going to deform it this much, realistically speaking. And also going into sculpt mode, I want to there, no, this one. I want to just pull out a couple of vertices a little bit more here. Just to be sure that this will never clip through as well. And just like that, we're back to 50-50. You guys really are split on whether or not this should be an Unreal or a Blender thing. Which I guess we'll figure it out. I'm going to be doing a little bit more weight painting here first regardless. So there's some time left over to figure it out. I just don't know why, for the love of God, it keeps selecting the scarf when I just want to... There we go. So what I probably... hold on. How do we fix that? Is it a matter of unpainting this a little bit more? Like, should this not bend through as much? I think that might be what we're going for here. A little less bending through. No, this definitely should move with it. Might be a little bit too much again. Part of the issue is also that this texture like never goes any further than this. But it's actually a pretty good way to check in on how this should move, I think. Maybe not. We'll see. Again, I think I'm wasting a lot of time here, if I'm being 100% honest with you. Because if we just go into pose mode here, and we simply, like, I think it's called clear all transforms. Realistically, the head and the neck are never going to bend around much more than like this, because a lot of that movement is going to come from the shoulder movement itself, which that one works more or less properly. The thing that is a little bit more relevant is how it moves in this direction, and I mean that it does pretty well, I would argue. Maybe it's taking a bit too much with it here. Maybe it is. I'm just gonna stick with what I got here, because we're supposed to be animating and rigging things and not losing our mind to why do you clear transform? There we go. And not losing our mind to things like weight painting. That is just not what we're here for. So let's just call this weight paint job done. And that leaves us with a rigged up and ready to animate, more or less, character. And the poll results are in for us, and it's 40% Blender, 60% Unreal. So we're gonna get this shit up. We set this shit up in Unreal Engine, which means that we have to export this, and I have to actually open up Unreal. Let me put away my tablet real quick, because we're not going to be drawing anything anymore. And even if we were, Unreal, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't have pressure sensitivity support, so it's significantly less useful to work with a tablet at that point. Let's export some files. FBX. And while I do that, I will also open up the project in Unreal. I can just say our basic repo. I'll put that back over there actually. What we'll do is we'll only do the visible objects in the active collection. Armature we will not add leaf bones, only export the deform bones. We'll call this Reaper Basic rigged. And that should be... I don't necessarily need to include the animations, but fine, we'll just export that. I'll actually copy that file path. And just like that, Unreal started up. Oh, we already have a file path to that open, I think. We have, yeah, Reaper Basic rigged. So we'll add that to the 3 models, characters, enemy, Reaper Basic. It's empty. Skeleton mesh, we want to import the mesh with geometry and skinned weights. Skeleton, it will generate. The only thing that I want to be 100% sure on is that it imports it. Well, if it's a skeleton mesh, it should import all of these separate objects as one mesh. Right, so if I disable this, we get some other options. But that's not going to be relevant because we're importing a skeleton mesh. So if we import all, that should... There still is a distinct possibility that it's now importing like 50 different skeleton meshes. Okay, we're good. While we're at it, actually, let's also import our texture sets for this, just to hook them up. And for now, just use the materials that come with this. I should make a master material for this sometime pretty soon. But right now, I can't be bothered to do that, so let's just... can I zoom in without scrolling? Because my scroll wheel is still fucked. And we'll end the poll as well. Because at this point, we are inside Unreal Engine. So this is the arms. So that's these 3 textures that we're going to be using. That will be the base color, the normal map, and then this one is occlusion, roughness, and metallic. And then for the body, it'll be the other 3 textures that we have right here. And there as well, we have base color, we have a normal map, and then this one is occlusion, roughness, and metallic. Not that it is metallic at all, but there you go. And that should now make our skeletal mesh actually look halfway decent. What does it look like in Engine? I don't dislike it. It's pretty good. What does it look like when I put it in the world, though? Just, it's big. It's really big. But that's pretty easy to fix, obviously. We can just say, hey, you've got to be a fair bit smaller than that. And I like the look of it. Okay, now let's get to... I don't know why that would be fucking with any dependencies. Let's delete the pre-existing animations because we're not going to be using them. And instead we're going to be building up a rig for this. This is going to be very easy. We're just going to put like a couple of forward kinematic chains, like one for the spine, one for each arm, and then I'm going to probably also, just for shits and giggles, add some inverse kinematic chains for the arms, and then try to make a toggle for IK to FK. That's the idea. But I don't even know if I will be using inverse kinematics, if I'm being real with you. So I might not get around to doing that to begin with. Kind of depends on what I feel like. We can create... we should be able to create it of the skeleton, right? Maybe it's of the physics asset. Oh, it's the skeleton mesh. Right? And then skeleton, we create skeleton. No, create control rig. That should probably be off of the skeleton. I'm not going to lie to you. That makes a lot more sense. Okay, so anyone who hasn't seen my video on Control Rig in Unreal, we've got a forward solve and a backward solve. Forward solve is just setting up a rig like you know it. Backward solve is setting up a rig to have its reverse engineer existing animations into keyframes, which is very, very nice. We're not going to be doing that because obviously we don't have any existing animations for this guy. Could be useful to set up at some point though. So the first thing we're going to do is set up an FK chain, and there we want to hook up the bones and the corresponding controllers. So going into our rig hierarchy here, that's a lot of fucking... We also need to set up the fingers now that I think about it. That's actually going to be a pain to deal with because there's a lot of them. We'll deal with that when we get to that. For now, we can just collapse both of the hands, and that makes things seem a lot easier. So this is the root bone, I think. We've got bone and then bone 1, and then we start with the spine. Okay, so this is the entire spine. We'll also take the head into account for that, I think. Should we? We probably should, yeah. We can just drag it out, and we can create an item array of that. And that creates an array with all of those bones in it. You can connect up those bones. Just close this down to make them a little easier to look at. And then we need to set up the controls. And for these ones, it's going to be very easy to set up the controls. We just right click on... Actually, we can do it with all of them selected, I believe. We just right click, say new control. No. There is a way to do this in bulk. Add control for selected is what you do. And now we have controllers for all of the bones that we had selected. So with all of those here, we go over the right side to the shape properties. I'll like the spine to be yellow circles, so I set the color to yellow. The shape to circle thick. Circle thick seems good. And then we just rotate this 90 degrees in the X. And from there, it's easiest to just use this to scale them down to a reasonable size. Hold on, where did the head one go? That one's way too small, never mind. Don't want to make them too small to the point where they're hard to click or hard to see. Oh, yeah, no. Because they're all parented to each other, which makes sense, you want to do this the other way around. You want to do this bottom to top. And also only scale them in the proper directions, like these ones. Okay, this is kind of annoying. I never claimed that the Unreal solution to this was perfect, right? Because if I did that, I would be fucking lying. Because it's definitely not perfect. I don't like the way you have to deal with these. Can I set this to like world instead of local? I can. Not. Never mind. Maybe for this one I can, and then I can scale them down to like 20, maybe 35 and 35. You see, this is why I fucking hate this, because for some reason now the scaling is weird. Like this one scales in the X direction, that makes sense, right? This one scales in the Y direction. Okay, no, never mind, that just works now. I don't know why it suddenly decided to start working, but it did. Now, we can select all the other ones and try to see whether or not they all decided to start working now. And it seems like they have. So now all we need to do is just pull these out a little bit and... Oh, I understand now. So what I'm doing is when I'm using these handles over here is I'm actually impacting the transform here and not just the shape transform, which might seem like a small difference, but when I compile this, the changes I made there disappear. Might be kind of hard to see. So what you do instead is you just use these, which is a lot easier. So 45 for that one, and then that one seems pretty good. Can probably go down to like 0.3 for these, right? To have them be a little bit like more snugly around the body. And we can use these now and also make an item array out of that. And as simply as that, we now have a setup for the spine. Okay, so if I rotate this around, you will see it rotates the actual bones and the mesh with it. So that's how easily we can do that. Now we do the same thing for the arms. And then we get to these fucking things, also known as fingers. And the fingers are a lot more annoying to have to deal with. So we'll get to that when we get to that. That'll be fine. For now, let's take the FK chain here. And for now, we'll just hook them all up. When we eventually maybe get into implementing IK for this as well, we'll need to put in a little bit of logic here, but we'll worry about that when we get to that, if we even get to that, that is. So we'll do the same thing. Item array for the bones, and an item array for the bones again. There we go. And then we select these bones and we make new controls for selected, which are going to be really big circles. And here, what I generally like to do is I like to still use the circle thick for all of them, pretty please. And then use different colors. It's not a I like to do this. It's a this is how most people do it, just to make sense of things. Give them different colors for each side. So you probably should be somewhat consistent for this. I'm going to use for his right arm, which I named improperly because technically that's his left arm if you're looking at it from his perspective, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to go for blue, and we'll set this to a scale of like 0.1 for each of them. And then I think we can just set this to 90 as well. And then we just take this top one, which is also going to scale up the other ones. Oh no, because it's using the... Okay, that makes sense. Because we're just changing the transform for the... 21. Just changing the transform for the shape itself and not for the actual object. Everything parented under it is not getting changed. So that's just a mistake that I made before. And that's, I think, the first ones. Oh, I made a fuck up. Made a big fuck up. We create an item array. And that now should also be moving the hands. And the reason it's curling up all three is because I've got all three selected. So if I just select this one, it'll only move exactly in the way you expect it to move. So that's that one done. And then we do the same for the other arm. We create new controls for selected. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy everything about the shape by shift right clicking. And then I shift left click and it pastes everything about the shape there. And now I just need to change the color to like pink, for instance, for the other side. And here I can actually also shift right click, shape transform, and then select all of these. And there we go. That said, there is one that needs to be a little bit bigger. So we scale, scale. And that's the forward kinematic setup. That's how easily... the thing is, all this setup we did, I mean, this took like 10 minutes just now. This is just to give controllers to bones that already like did what they needed to do. This is just like parenting things, right? Like if I just move the bone in Blender, we can go over to Blender and move this bone around. Like it does the exact same thing already. So this is just giving controllers to things that already existed. Not altogether. We do need to actually hook up the FK chain here. So not altogether anything too complicated. And I kind of wish, and there might be something and I'm just not aware of it, I kind of wish there was just a way to like set up the basic forward kinematic like this automatically. And I think there might be. I'll have to look into that, to be honest with you. Now, IK is a little more iffy. But let's do that after the fingers, actually. I want to do the fingers first. So, for the fingers, what we're going to do is I have a specific tutorial on rigging up hands, because it's a thing. It's just kind of tedious to do. You can do it the same way, just making a FK chain for each single finger. And if you want to individually animate every single piece of this finger, you probably do want to do that, but we don't need to animate every single piece of the finger. We just want like one control to bend the finger all together. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to take the control rig for the knight that I have here as a reference, because what we do is somewhere in here, I think it's this one maybe, that's what we needed. I needed to know the name of this node. We use distribute rotation. And as a matter of fact, we might be able to just simply copy this over. Yeah, I don't know if it's worth copying things over too much. So we distribute rotation and we distribute them over all of the fingers, all of these segments of one finger, rather. So let's just work top to bottom. We've got the thumb. Actually, the thumb is kind of a special case. We'll get back to that in a moment. So we can create an item array here. And if we do that, we see it rotates in the wrong direction. So we want to rotate probably around the... Nope, around the Z for these bones. And what we put in here, this number is the maximum rotation that these fingers can get. So if you want them to be able to curl in very far, you can say like 90, and then you can make a fucking square out of them. About 70 seems pretty good for me right here, I think. I think about 70 seems pretty good. And then we need to add a weight. So if we set this to 0 now, it snaps back to the beginning and it just blends between those two. And we can, in theory, probably... I don't know, can we? I think it clamps it automatically at a weight of 1. So you can't even set anything higher than 1. And the way we accomplish that is we get a controller. And that's one of these arrows here. And we just get its percentage along its current value to its maximum. So let's copy that over as well. It's going to be the weight. We don't have a controller to put in there yet, but we're going to make that one right now. Only thing that I want to know is if I select this controller, where did I parent that? I parented that to a null, which is connected to the hand. We don't really need to put that on a null, I wouldn't say. So we can just make a new, for the index here, we can just make a new controller. And we'll put that one on the hand. So this is going to be a very big one again. Guess what we're going to do first? We're going to make this one a little bit smaller. When I say a little bit, I mean even more than that, most likely. So something like that seems slightly more reasonable. And we'll change this to being a arrow, which can be a arrow thick. That's the wrong arrow. We need an arrow with one direction. So just arrow. Oh, arrow solid is what we want. And then we change that to rotate 90 degrees around itself. And then we probably want this to be like 50. 50 is way too much. 1. Not 1 at Z. 1 in the X. Minus 0.1. So that's just above the finger itself. And it actually needs to be even fucking smaller. Okay, that might be a little bit too small. I'll be real with you. 3. 2. Let's go with that. And we can look at the other ones in a moment. That'll be fine. Here we go back from the value type being Euler transform. We don't need to have a lot of transform data. We just need a float value here. And that float value is pointing us a little bit in the wrong direction, which is fine. Because the primary axis should be the Z, the Y. Okay. Let me think for a moment here. I probably just set up my bones weird in Blender. To be honest with you. So is there an easy way to fix that up? I suppose what we can do is if we just, that's only the, okay. Okay, so this is a little bit annoying. What you have to do is you have to go back into Euler transform. That way you can rotate this thing around. And we want to do that with snapping. So we can rotate this thing around so it's facing the other direction. And then we set this to 270 instead. That way... Oh, that's... That should still be 90, but then we turn it around 180 degrees in some axis. There we go. And now, if we set this back to float, it loses that. Why does it lose that? That's weird. That's not what I like. Can we set this to... I suppose we could set this to a maximum of 0 and then a minimum of -1. That's a thing that we could do. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's definitely a possibility. I'm also not a huge fan of how this rotation thing works. It's clearly using quaternions, but using XYZ as inputs, meaning that you get shit like this, right? When you change one axis, it automatically changes the others, and I don't like that. Hold on. I think a second ago I had it facing the way that I wanted to have it face. And then it didn't face the way I wanted it to face, because why the fuck would it? I just want both of these to be set to 0. Is that so fucking hard? If we just reset that and set this to 90. Or both of them to 180, that also works for me. Fine. For God's sake. Anyway, if we put that in there, let's see what this does. Doesn't do shit. Can we make this like an absolute value instead? Okay, that's gonna be the easiest way for me to fix this. It's just, we're gonna ignore the fact that it has a... Oh, probably also... Let's use the minimum value instead. So now this should work, right? So if I pull this down... Okay, that works. Fantastic. It's a little iffy, but it works. And I would just repeat that for another 7 fingers, and the 2 thumbs will do a little bit differently. It's more or less the same setup, just with some slightly different stuff. And the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna set all of this shit up as a function. So we can right click and collapse to function. And we'll name that function something. Can I pretty please... what we'll do is, instead of making that 2 parameters and being all fucked about it, we'll just make that 1 controller parameter, which should create a drop-down menu for us, I do think. But I would like to know how I can change the name of this function. Can I right-click and like change name? No? F2? Also doesn't work? Well, fuck me then. Doesn't really matter. Okay, now let's do the same thing for the middle ring, pinky finger. So that's 4 of them in total. Yes. Make some new controls for selected. Get very panicked because everything becomes very, very red for a second. But that shouldn't be that big a deal, because we can just copy over the shape information and paste it on everything here. And then we can copy over the very fucked up transform information. Okay, this one is a little misaligned. I'm gonna say I don't really care about that, so we'll just ignore that, okay? Just ignore that. And paste. Can we not paste that? I mean, that's fine. We can just set all of these to floats. And I think we chose the y-axis with a minimum of -1 and a maximum of 0. So that then creates those lines for all of those fingers. And we can just put in this function 3 more times. I'm starting to think that we might not actually get to do all that much animation if I also do the IK, which I was a little afraid of. Can we just like get control and then... What if I suppose I just look this up by name. That works for me as well. I would have preferred a drop down. Which I might still be able to do in some way, but for now it doesn't really matter. This is plenty quick as it is. That's not what I want. I want to paste it in there. And then we simply go through. So we take the middle fingers, item array, hook that up. We take the ring fingers, item array, hook that up. And we take the pinky fingers, item array, and hook that up. And then when we compile and we select all 4 of these things and we move them, it moves all of the fingers just like we want it to. Now, the thumb is a little bit more iffy, as I explained a moment ago, because the thumb doesn't just move in its own direction. If you just look at your own hand right now, right? If you just move all of your fingers, they just move in the direction that the finger points. But when you curl in your thumb, first and foremost, your thumb has much more freedom of movement to begin with, but we're going to ignore that for now. But when it folds into the palm of your hand, it actually folds in on angle, which is really annoying for this, because we can't reuse that function now. So what we'll do, if we come in here, we can still reuse the same basic ID. We just need to set up ever so slightly different Euler angles here, and that's kind of all there is to it. So we do that, and we go all the way back up to the thumb. Create an item array. And the exact values we'll check out in a moment. But for now, we'll make a new controller for the thumb. And we should be able to symmetrize this over to the other side in a moment, which will be very, very nice. I just need to remember how that actually works. So let's look for the thumb controller. And then we'll copy over the shape information and all that good stuff. Like the transform as well. Over here. And just to be sure, if I rotate this... Okay, so those other controllers rotate with it. Needed to make sure of that for a moment there. Again, it's kind of annoying that I can't seem to just copy over everything in this control. I'm not going to be able to help you out live on video here. But when you add it in your jump animation, the animation is delayed. That could be a lot of things. How delayed is it? Are you sure that it's actually delayed in the animation, or is your animation just like... the issue with jump animations can very often be is that when you make a jump animation, you're adding in some like anticipation movement, as makes sense with animation usually. But for gameplay animations like that, you generally don't want to do that because they feel unresponsive as a result. And it could be something to do with... Let's actually set this to minus 0.5. Yeah, that's a bit better. It could be something to do with that. It could be to do with the fact that you have a state machine set up and you can only enter the jump state from a certain other state, and you're not in that state yet. So it'll... Like if you're falling, for instance, and you're trying to jump, and you can only jump when you're in the like idle or walking state, it's not going to let you do the jumping animation unless you're in those states. So that could be another one of those issues. But largely, if you follow the state machine tutorial that I have, and the character doesn't do the animation until it starts coming down, you probably just hooked up some of the connections between the states wrong. That, I have to imagine it's probably that. Anyway, so yeah, you can see that this doesn't really look good for a thumb. So what we'll do instead is probably add like 50 degrees to this. Maybe, frankly, make this 50 as well. Yeah, probably don't need to do that. I should zoom in a little bit so you can actually see what I'm doing. 10 degrees, minus 50. Actually, I think the X rotation just doesn't need to rotate at all. 80. Do we want 80? I don't think we want 80. 40 in that, and then 80 in that. And then maybe the X rotation can be 15. That looks pretty good. So now if we select all of these and we pull them all down, we have... Yeah, actually, going back here, this definitely should be like 85 still. We have a functioning hand that can open and close very easily. Now, if we select these, I think what we can do somewhere in here is we can mirror them. There we go, mirror. And we want to flip them around the... Mirror them around the X, and we want to search for everything with an R and change that to an L. And that adds in those same controls on the other side. It's just as simple as that. Control L, add those to the hand over there. Also give them a different color here. Let's make these ones like green or something like that. But that's only, sadly, the controls. They don't actually do anything. But I think what we should be able to do as well is do the same with these nodes. Maybe not. I don't know, I'm just going to copy them over instead. That's honestly the easier way to do this at the moment. So what we'll do is we'll just... Can I just like replace these? I think there's a way to do this. I just don't know what it is. So we'll do it manually. It's not that much work. The most work is in setting up the controllers, and the controllers have been set up now. So let's close down the arm here and open up hand left, and we'll just make a bunch of... This is for the thumb, we'll get to that in a moment. The index, the middle, the ring, and the pinky finger. And that should be as easy as... Maybe we need to change up some things, but I don't think we should have to. If you have the same problem with some other tutorials as well, I have to assume that you're working with... Well, no, actually your mesh shouldn't matter at all. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know it's not very helpful, but you must be like fundamentally misunderstanding something about how the animation transitions work in that case, and making a mistake based off of that. Either that or your animation itself is fucked, which is entirely possible. If you're like not using the... Why is it not copying over? If you're not using the like pre-made animations from like somewhere else, what could also be the case is you could just have a animation that has some like empty space up at the beginning of it, which means that it might not be playing... Well, it might be playing the animation, but you might not be seeing the actual movement of the animation for a bit. That might be something to do with it. But again, if it is specifically showing the jumping animation as you come down, that seems like it is a state machine based issue where something is just not hooked up correctly in the correct direction or to the correct other state or whatever. And not so much anything to do with the animation itself. So I have to imagine it's something like that that you should be looking at. Yeah, this definitely seems to be going the wrong direction. Okay. In that case, let me... I guess just add this. So for these other ones, it still works, right? Still works the way it should work now. It does. And these ones I just need to change up. So if I just select all of the controls here for this. There we go. All that I need to do is make sure that this is actually the end of... I almost fucked up. It's good. Just change this to -70. And it should be pointing the right direction now. This looked really weird for a moment. And they are all in the right direction. I can just copy this over and paste in all the other ones. And then here we also want to negate all of these other ones in here. And that should now also have a working hand there. Okay. I've been at this for an hour. I think I'm going to skip the inverse kinematics until I actually feel like I need the inverse kinematics, and we're going to start animating with this guy that I have right here. I think that is probably the most logical thing to be doing here. So let's add some comments here. So this is FK spine, FK arms, fingers right, and fingers left, just so that when I come back to this at some point, if I do, I actually know what is going on. Okay, cool. With all that, say goodbye to this level, because I've got a separate level in which I do all of my animation, so they don't end up getting too cluttered in the persistent world here. Where did I put that is the question though. I put that in levels, and I have a specific animation level. There we go. Which I also use for testing in general, so I can just play, and here we have just like a playground for me to work with a little bit. We'll look into those errors at some other point. So here, what we can do is yeah, I think what you should do is you should check out my Unreal Basics series. I have a playlist with individual videos, but I recommend just going through all of them, and I also have a like 5-hour combined version of them. I think that would probably be a good thing to do. Let's see, where did I... characters, enemies, basic Reaper. And here, if we just pull in the control rig for this and just put it like fucking somewhere, we get a sequencer. And it makes that sequencer animation asset fucking somewhere, apparently. Let's order this properly right away. So animations, new folder, enemies, basic Reaper. And then what we do is we make a level sequence, and we call that Reaper idle. And then we open that up. And once we do that, we want to add in our control rig from assets. And bam, we've got our control rig to start animating with. So we don't really want to animate the transform of the character itself. What we want to do is we want to animate for now, first things first, what we're going to do is we want to okay, I clearly forgot a thing. If you couldn't tell. So let's go back to our basic Reaper here. We also need to parent these to that one. And that's relatively easy. The way we do that is we set up a parent constraint for a control to a control, and then we say, hey, this one is going to be the child. And this one, I think is that one. Anyway, maybe it's another one. Is going to be the parent. And then we just add another one for the other side. So the parent is going to stay the same. We're just going to change around the child. If I can click on it properly. There we go. So we just change around the child. Compile that again. And now when we move this thing around, it actually moves the entire mesh. So we can move you up ever so slightly. It's a little glitchy. Don't worry about that. That works as intended, I hope. And I'm back at 90 seconds, so we have... that should move with it. I don't know why it's not. Maybe I need to save this. When I move this in here, they move with it, right? Yes, they do. I have to imagine it's just the sequencer bugging out, because the sequencer can be a little buggy sometimes. So let's check again. If I do this now... okay, that's a little weird. Let's see if I re-add the control rig again, if it does the same thing, which is not a fix. Don't get me wrong. But that does seem to have fixed it. And this is what I mean with Unreal Sequencer is a little iffy sometimes. Like it doesn't work quite the way you want it to work most of the time. It's just iffy and weird, kind of glitchy. Yeah, Trader just doesn't like doing that, does it? What the fuck? If I turn this around, probably shouldn't be snapping at 90 degrees, it moves them with it, so... but then the interesting question becomes, at this point I'm just experimenting, do the arms move? The arms don't move at all. Why is that? Are you guys being animated in like world space or something? No, 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 you're not. Okay. Next thing to check. Create a linked animation sequence. Reaper idle. If we do that, and my god, where did I put it? Reaper idle. If I open this up, does it do the same weird thing with the arms? Yes, it does. What the actual fuck? That's not how that works. Or that's not how that should work at any rate. I mean... perform quaternion slurp and sequence. Different order of parent can produce different results. Yeah, but that doesn't really matter. That's not really what this is about. We don't have like a simple parent, right? I've got a better idea. We don't need to parent constraint this. I am just an idiot. What you do is you take both of these and you just parent the controls to that. And that entirely fixes the issue. I mean, there's still a little bit of clipping going on due to the rotation, but that was just for like testing purposes. So if we were to just reset this rotation, my god, that creates a nice basic bobbing up and down effect. Okay. At least there's fucking that. That's good. So that's 90. There we go, and then 140, 170. This should loop now, right? That seems like it was too fast. Because it was doing 45 frames before, now it's doing 35. So this is 10 frames more needed. I'm going to add a notify to when my character jumps in the animation and then make the character actually jump on that notify. Do you know how to bring the notify into the event graph? You don't bring it into your character's blueprint. It is in your animation blueprint. So the moment you add a notify to any of your animations, that becomes an available event in your animation blueprint. I use notifies quite a lot too. They're really nice to work with. So what you do is you... Let me just open up a blueprint here for my player character, for instance. This is the easiest and fastest way for me to get to the animation blueprint because I don't know where I put that. In animations, that makes sense. So what you do is you have like a, here in my attack, for instance, I have a notify for damage box on and damage box off, and like a combat pulsing thing, like a combat dash that he has. And those become available events to then use in the event graph of your animation blueprint. So I've got this damage box off, which does a thing, and damage box on, which does a thing. And there's combat pulse, which does a thing. You do that through your animation blueprint. You can't access these through your character's blueprint itself. Because they're being fired by animations, it's the animation blueprint that takes care of that stuff. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to real quick use the bathroom, and then we're actually going to make some goddamn animations after an hour. I just had an idea. Instead of making just one baked animation, what I probably am going to do is I'm going to blend the animations to make something a little bit more fun. What type of notify do you think I should use for it? A notify is just a notify. Like if I just go into an animation, I add a notify state. You definitely should just add a notify. Just add notify and then make a new notify. for that. I'm not entirely sure what notify state. I'm assuming a notify state is something that you can like. Yeah, that's a notify that lasts a certain amount of time. So this is if I go into here now and I try to look for trail, it probably has a notify to do with that. Or this might automatically turn on that particle effect. That's probably what's going on. So those don't add. Yeah, so these just like, these are effective. That's actually really good to know. Never really bothered with that. But that probably means I can also make a notify state. I'll have to look into that. For like turning on and off the damage box easily. With a notify state instead of with 2 notifies. Would be kind of nice. So you make a new notify like that. That's what you'll do. So what I was thinking for the animation here is I have this as like a base, right? And we can just use this. That's fine. In the animations, you can go. Actually, I think it's in here. For this skeletal mesh, let's create a anim blueprint. We'll drag that over here to the animations folder. Because what I'm thinking, right, is in this animation graph we can Reaper idle. We can just do this. And obviously we do need to like update that animation. And then we set this to loop. And now it just bounces up and down, right? That's all it does. But if we make another one, so Reaper idle tuning. The wonderful thing about what I'm about to do is that they don't have to line up in timing anymore now. So what I can do now is I can just say, hey, we're going to make a animation where we have like, I don't know, turn this guy around a little and make him look into some kind of direction or another. And then he takes like 120 frames, which may be a little too slow. And he then looks into the other direction and maybe even like has a little bit of tilt that way because of it. And then the other keyframe we tilt him a little bit in this way. "120 frames is definitely too slow." Let's set this at 80 frames and then set this at 160 for now. And that makes him look back and forth like that. At a speed that doesn't match the up and down speed, right? That's mostly the issue that I often have with animations. Is that the looping of the different actions within the animation don't match up. So my idea is to now create a linked animation sequence again, and this time actually put it into the proper folder. So this will be Reaper basic idle look. And we can drag that one in. And okay, if we use this one now, it does that one instead. So that's not great. But, and here's the thing, we have blend apply additive. That's what I wanted. So the base will be the repo idle, and then we apply additive with the other one, and now it should fuck off. That's not what I expected to happen. What happens if I put this at 0.1? Okay, he just becomes fucking huge, is what happens. That might be due to a root motion issue. Set this to 1. He becomes even fucking bigger. Like, ridiculously so. Can we somehow set this to not... Huh. Okay, I didn't expect that. Let's try apply mesh space additive, just to check whether or not that fixes the hey, I am now fucking humongous issue. I mean, I wouldn't say that it fixes it. Quite the opposite. It makes him even bigger and also breaks him the fuck apart. Let me Google real quick. Blender... not Blender, Unreal, apply additive makes mesh bigger. This has to be a common issue, right? I have a problem with animation offset that I really need, however, when setting animations as mesh space, you need to make sure that the base animation is set to no additive. It's a different issue than I have right here though. But we can try. But this already should be set to no additive, actually. Now I think about it. No or additive. No additive. Yeah, there we go. But maybe this one should actually be set to local space. And that makes you huge. Okay, that is the issue. Got it. But that should then fix it here, right? So we... Okay, that fixes it. So he's now looking from side to side while also bowing up and down. The only thing that we should do is make sure that it loops. So now we've got these two animations both looping. And then we make another one specifically for the arms. Or maybe I just add in the arms to this one. Maybe that's what we do. That makes a little bit more sense to do here, actually. So what we do is we just do a little something like that. And I just realized I wasn't aligned. So it's going to feel a little robotic doing it that way, probably. It's actually not too bad. I'm going to make separate animation for like the finger wiggles that he's going to do, though. Yeah, so this probably should be slightly offset. We'll worry about like slightly less static animations in a moment. For now, what we want to do is make sure that everything feels somewhat reasonable. And then going back to this, we want to rotate you a little more in that direction. Copy over all the keyframes on the starts and then copy them over to the end. Yeah, see, that's pretty robotic, and there is a little bit of clipping going on there as well, I notice now. I don't know how much there is we can really do about that. We probably want to fix up the weight painting a little bit more on those little areas specifically and see what we can improve there, but that's not for right now to worry about. I mean, you should put a notifier where you want to put it. Like, you put a notifier where you want some code to run. I honestly, I I can't just give you a blanket answer for that. So let's apply additive again. This will be the base, and people are obviously texting me while I'm live, because why not? Yeah, that's not my fucking problem now, is it? And then we copy over idle again, and we call this Reaper Finger Wiggles because that's a good name for an animation. Remove all these. And this one, I'll see how long we actually end up making them. It's pretty easy to animate this. Let's start with the fingers in somewhat random positions for all of them. Definitely don't have the middle finger sticking out though. Seems like a bad idea. Better idea. What we do is we set all of them... Hello, thank you very much. We set all of them to 0, and then we just make them all take like 45 frames to close down. Why did nothing get keyframes there? Oh, because that's parented. That makes sense. Okay. And then we take another 90 seconds or 90 frames. So now it's doing this, which is not great, obviously. But what we can do is we just offset these somewhat randomly. Or we could just make that an animation for each of the fingers and blend them all together that way. But now we can add in a keyframe for all this. And that gives us the very easy opportunity to just say, hey, whatever the case, by the end of this, let's say at frame 150, we want to end up at that place again. Which is still actually not great, I realize. There must be a better way to do this that I just haven't thought of yet. At some point, I'm sure we will figure it the fuck out. But for now, what we'll do is not do that. So that's the last keyframe of everything. Yep. And then we want to include everything. That's the first keyframe. I'm apparently not animating the thumb at all anymore. Which, sure. And then copy over the keyframes for literally everything to... Let's go for 201 frames, just for good measure. What does the end look like there? Actually, that's not that bad. Matter of fact, can we just like do one of these? Copy all these over and then find the hand left. And just say, hey, these tracks do the same thing with those. Please tell me we can do that. I don't think we can do that. It's kind of bullshit because they're literally just float values. Just like fucking do that for me, please. See, we can do that. I knew it. Just had to click the buttons in a different way, because fuck me. I will put it there for now, sure. Reaper, basic, finger wiggles. And its additive should be in local space. So now we can add that to here as well. Set it to a loop. And now the idea is that... Yeah, okay, so it's now blending all these animations with different timings together to make something that is a lot more dynamic feeling. So this will be its patrol animation. Patrol anim. It does give me like those creepy vibes the way that those fingers move. I really do like that. Really like the finger movements there. Sounds really weird. My guy's got good finger movements, okay? Don't judge him. Now, what are the other animations that we actually need for this guy? Let me check over here. We have a simple attacking animation for left and for right. We have a revenge hitting animation. We've got a left-right like double sweep animation. An animation for him disappearing. An animation for him appearing. And an animation for death animation as well. We need all of those. But the idle animation we've got. So let's go into our to-do logger here and just add those. So Reaper left hits, Reaper right hits, Reaper double swipe, Reaper not deer, Reaper vanish, Reaper appear, and Reaper death. All of which probably should go under art. Does that seem like art? Animation seems like art. Probably should just make a separate animation category, to be honest with you. I've done this one, so we can delete that one. I want to call this one Reaper left hit, so I know what I'm talking about. Gravestones we've also done. The skull lantern we've done. Well, I think I meant a normal lantern there. Doesn't matter. Okay. Now that I have those in a list in Engine, this is just a lot more comfortable to work with. Which is the first that we should do. I think just a normal hit, like a left hit and a normal right hit, will be pretty good to do. And those can honestly be similar to attacks that I already have in animation, right? What they can be is just like raise the arm up and then swipe it back down. Like that should honestly be pretty easy. So let's copy over the Reaper idle again, and we'll call this Reaper attack left. Make sure that we have readable capitalization. Or not. I'm fine with either way, to be honest with you. And this will then be... I'm just going to put this up at like 60. It's probably way too slow. But we'll figure this out as we go. Pull him back a little bit, and maybe that's even too much. It's probably too much, to be honest with you. Make him lean back. Yeah, that's way too much in its transform. Or in its position, rather. But it's also just blatantly not enough in terms of rotation. Like, he should really be hanging the fuck back when he does this. And this is left, right? So that's this arm. So this should be rotated away as well. And let's make him move a little bit less, because that's honestly ridiculous. And we want to segment this animation a little bit as well, so that it doesn't all move at the same time. But we'll get to that in a moment. I did just realize a thing. And that is that we probably should start this limb off like a lot more rotated inward. Like a lot more rotated inward. But we can't really do that due to the weight painting job I did, which was not that good. Also, why is it not auto-keying? The fuck? Like, none of these are actually keyed. These should all be... just key everything there. And then here, I suppose we just reset everything this way. Makes the most sense to me. Like, yeah, it's definitely moving stuff around too much. We'll have to fix the weights. It's actually not too bad if you do it like that. Still probably going to have to fix those weights around at some point and improve them quite a bit. But I think for now this will work. Start with these a little close down as well. So we can have a proper extending the fuck out of this kind of movement. Honestly, want this to be a little bit more like yeah, I'm not sure how this will look. What the fuck even happened with that arm? Yeah, yeah, I don't think that's what I wanted to do. But nice try nonetheless. Let's change this to like -5. Not -5. Point taken. Okay. Oh, hold on. The issue might not be with that. Okay. We have a movement back. A few frames, like 10, in which we have just a little bit of through movement. And maybe a little recentering as well. And slight anticipation, and then we have a very quick, let's say, another 10 frames for let's use the basic pose again here as a reference, but instead this one will be tilted a lot more forward. And have this reaching out a lot more, which we can do through this. And then what layer even are these? You don't really make rigging a character faster. You're doing it like the reason you rig a character is to save yourself a lot of time and headache later on in the animation process. So if you skip out on that, you're just going to regret it. Not everything is a lot of fun, sadly. So yeah, making a rig like the thing that I made here, we did on stream. It took like an hour, which is really stupid because a lot of this is literally just connecting controllers to forward kinematic bone chains. But that's just kind of something that you have to do. No way to really sugarcoat that. That's unfortunately just the truth of how things work. Like, not everything is fun, unfortunately. And to make the... if you think animation is fun, I think animation is painful, but... if you think animation is fun, to make the fun parts, that being the animation, a little bit more bearable and easier to work with, you have to do preparation. Unfortunately, that's all there is to it. Okay, so we've got the arm, and inside of the arm we have, no, we've got the hand. And inside of the hand we've got all of these. Okay, there we go. Let's make these rotate through a little bit more even. Yeah, time to do some rigging. I'm glad for my own sake that I just finished doing a lot of rigging. Okay, that's not too bad. We probably want to rotate this through a little bit more. And actually, I think what we want is to maybe not necessarily have these close all the way down because we are doing like a nail swiping attack. But maybe to have them do a little bit more like this. That makes sense to me. Well, no, I don't really love this animation so far, but it's a good base. Well, it's pretty decent. Timing definitely needs to work a lot better. As I said earlier this week, and earlier this stream probably as well, I'm not really an animator. I just do what I need to do for my game. But we can probably narrow this down to like a 40 frame wind up. Yeah, no, there's a lot more wrong with this than just the fact that the first part is kind of slow. Because, I mean, everything is kind of slow on this animation. Like this might be better off being 30 frames and then this hanging bit only 3 frames, and then the swiping, see, that is 33 to 47 frames, something like that. That's a little bit more power to it. generally what I do is I do the major poses first, then I do some timing, and then I move keyframes around to make more like mechanical sense. Because you wouldn't, if you're turning around, like you wouldn't turn everything at the same time into this pose and then change into this pose. Like body mechanics work much more sequentially than this, and not moving from pose to pose. We can have like a couple of frames where you move through a little too much. Overshoot, as we call that. Let's see. You don't really feel the overshoot there. It just feels like the animation is going through a little longer. So maybe that just needs to be slightly slower overshoot bit. It's also going to start blending back into the idle animation at the end there. So honestly, that feels a little bit more reasonable. So here we start then also blending back into the idle animation. Lost like 10 frames or so. No, not going to be a horror game. It's an action RPG. But like a lot of the character styles are going to be slightly more on the, well, not horror, but slightly more creepy style, because that's just kind of a style that I work well with. I'm gonna lie, I actually think that this animation, aside from the fact that like the things are clipping through itself, just ignore that. I actually think that this animation looks pretty decent, and honestly, part of this whole clipping through itself issue is the weight, but it's also the fact that there's any mesh under here at all. There's no reason that there should be a mesh under there at all. It doesn't have a Steam page yet, or a name. I'm still working on the name as well. And I do have making a Steam page on my to-do list for this game, but it's quite bothersome to make a Steam page, so I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. Now, Unreal sequence animation control rig mirror, something like that. Is there a quick and easy way to mirror an entire animation? Mirroring animation copies an animation from one side to the other side, so you can reuse the same animation in different situations. What does that look like? A mirror data table. Let's make that. Because that way I have both of these. No, because I need to use different notifiers. Well, but I can do that. First and foremost, let's just make this animation into a animation sequence. So this will be Reaper attack left. I'm making a horror game in a horror engine. If you know it, maybe, but I have to modify so many things to be different than the other games that were using the horror engine. Well, I'm assuming that you mean you're using some kind of template project, in which case it's a good start. Saves you having to do a few things on your own, but that kind of stuff you always do need to. Pretty much by the end, you probably will have rewritten a lot of the stuff that they made for you to begin with, but it's a good starting off point to immediately be able to get into it. Technically speaking, this is the Unreal Engine third-person character blueprint or template that I'm using. There's very little left of the original code of the third-person template, but it gives you an easy jumping off point, so that entirely makes sense. there shouldn't be any spaces in names. Now let's look this up. We can go into like animation, and then we have a mirror data table for the Reaper skeleton. Reaper mirror table. And it automatically finds the R and the L and everything, and it just does the thing. That's fantastic. That honestly is fantastic. I don't even need to do anything. Yeah, making games is a lot of work. That's I'm right there with you. So can I now like just like copy this over and say, hey, mirror this or something like that? I probably should just read the article on it. Hold on. I think that makes a lot more sense to do. Editing entries, yeah. Data table details, sure. Mirror access, all that works. Find expression, but how do I use them? Okay, so that doesn't actually work for me after all, because what we can do, I can show real quick. We can say mirror with data table, and that will then oh no, have I been editing the I think I've been editing the wrong animation. We'll just rename the animations. That works for me. But what we can do is we can say, hey, mirror this shit, and then it will do it in the other direction. But it also doesn't really do it properly. So aside from that, it just mirrors it in here, and it actually does need to be a separate different animation clip. So we just need to make an animation for left and for right, after all. But before we do any of that, I need to go back here, and I need to make sure that all my animations are named properly, because I think I mixed some things up a little bit. So if we just say idle, the idle animation is this one. Okay. And then the turning animation is this one. Okay. The finger wiggles is this one. It looks really funny when it's only doing the finger wiggles. Or the wiggle fingers, or whatever I called it. And then this is the attack animation. So why are these things hooked up strangely? I have to wonder. This is the wrong thing. Don't need that. Let's please just turn all that off. Same with this. Oh, so it's fixed now. That's good. So we're not going to be using the mirror data table, it seems like. And we have that, which we'll put in a notify for this at some point. But that's not really relevant right now. We just need to make this same animation here. It probably can be even quicker, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm gonna make it even quicker. Specifically this first part, like if we just make that like 15 frames instead, what does that feel like? That then makes this feel a little slow, so make that even faster. Then we make that faster too. Might be a little too fast. Like at this point you've got half a second to run the fuck away. And then he just swipes real fast, which with the particle effects that I see in my mind with this, that's actually going to look really good. Because what I want to do, this is real cool. What I want to do is I want to add like a particle emitter to the tip of every single one of his fingers. So that way when he does the swipe attack, they all turn on for a few frames. And you get like this arcing path of like a ribbon particle system. I think that'll be really kind of cool. So with it being such a fast movement, I think that'll probably end up working out fairly well. Might be a little too fast. We'll figure it out in gameplay, I suppose. Let's copy it over and start working on the attack. Right. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to just like put all my hopes and dreams on the fact that if I go into this over here and I say, hey, take this and put it on there. So we take this and put it on there. Maybe? I don't think that's gonna work, is it? Unless we deselect them first and then we can do that? Maybe we can? Hold on. Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. That's not gonna work. Never mind. That's also the issue that we faced before. Now that makes a certain amount of sense. Honestly, there probably is something that we can do about that in that data table. But that still doesn't really change anything for me. Because we can only like it's nice that we can like procedurally mirror, but I need it to be an actual separate clip because it also needs to enable a different damage box. So not much we can do about that. Then again, for right now, I don't think what I want to do is I want to get to a point where we can actually we can actually start like programming this guy on Monday, preferably. And for that he doesn't need 2 attacks. For that all that he needs is like we've got 1 attack, we've got like the left attack, right? We need the vanishing and the appearing animation and the death animation. And then the revenge hits as well, which I haven't actually included. Reaper revenge hit, which I'm not entirely sure what that's gonna look like yet, to be honest with you. I fix it and put it all together, but can you delete a part of animation that you imported in? Yeah, I think you can, because somewhere in here, if you've got an animation clip, what you can do is somewhere in here, I think you have a starting and an ending point, I thought anyway. Interesting, you can interpolate in steps instead of linearly. Maybe not. That might just be in animation montages. Under advanced? I could have sworn you could do that. I have done it in the past, I'm pretty sure. Let's see, you can... Yeah, I think you can do it like this. So if you put your playhead somewhere in an animation and you right click, you can remove frame 0 to 28 in this case, or 29 to 37. So you can either remove everything before it or everything after it by using these buttons. I was pretty convinced you could do it otherwise as well, but maybe you can't. Not entirely sure. In the worst case, what you can also do is you can... I need to make an animation montage of this anyway. What you can do is you can make a animation montage by right-clicking on any animation sequence and then go and create an montage. And then you get one of these assets with a blue underline instead. And those ones you can definitely go into their... if you select any of these green segments here, you can say what the end time and the start time for it should be. So if I want this to start like at 0.5 and only do the swiping bit and not the anticipation bit, I can just cut off the anticipation bit there. And if I want it to be even more snappy, I can do it like that. And if I don't want the overshoot, I can say, actually you end at like 0.9 instead, which makes them end early. So at least for animation montages, you can do it that way. And I believe you can put animation montages without any problem in your... Okay, that's actually still an issue. You can't put animation montages into your graph like that. The way you need to execute those. Maybe you can still put them into a state machine though. Let me double check that for you. Player. Animation blueprint. Anim graph. Motion. Yeah, you can't put them into a state machine either. So those you can only play through animation slots. So that's not really a viable alternative for the most part, but it is still good to know. It's kind of annoying that you can't do that. I mean, there's probably a good reason for it. Another option is making a rig for it and backward solving it, or like just backward solving the armature. And that way you can regenerate keyframes out of a pre-existing animation, like I showed. Well, I didn't show it, like I said at the start of the stream. You can take an animation and it will generate keyframes to reproduce that animation, just reverse engineer it, and then you can cut off and change things to your liking as well. And that is the way, like, you're probably supposed to be interfacing with that. For now though, we need a disappearing and a reappearing animation, and that reappearing animation should also immediately have a attack associated with it. So what we'll probably do is not actually put those. No. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do a reappearing animation, and then we'll just play a shortened attack animation instead of baking it into that animation. So we can do one reappearing animation, and then it can do either a left animation or a right animation for the attack. So we don't have to make separate reappearing animations. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay. I don't know what movement is vanishing worthy though. Also, I just realized that we can't make a master material. Well, we could still make a master material for the most part, but for this one specifically, we're going to need to make a specific material, which we'll worry about all that when we get to that. Let's just do the Reaper idle, copy that over again, and we'll call this Reaper vanish. And I think after we've made the vanishing animation, we're probably going to end it for today, but we'll see. So what we'll probably do is just set this to like 61 frames, and then my first instinct is to make something where he like does a little bit of this, right? Can I actually bend multiple things at once? I can. Probably should have been doing that all along, eh? Bend these all forward a little like that. And then also bend his head forward a little more. I deleted part of the animation, but I deleted too much. But it won't let me bring it back with Control Z. That's weird. I'm not going to try that out because if that's an issue, I don't want to lose parts of my animations. Don't save the asset, close the engine and reopen the engine. If you've already saved the asset, shouldn't have done that. Let's see if we move you like that. Actually kind of works. Don't make them clip through each other though. That wouldn't be good at all. And then move in the hand for both of them a little as well. Like, it honestly can be as easy as this, right? We just say, hey, bend over a little, and while this happens, he also like does a little bit of a fade out. Where island animation? I didn't. I still am. I'm not that good at animation. The stuff that I do know, I'll learn from just doing. I do have quite a bit of like I don't even want to say motion graphic experience, because that's overselling my skill set a little bit. But I have a lot of experience working in Adobe After Effects, so that does help with like setting up skill in animation, I suppose, to a certain degree. I mean, that's a pretty decent movement. It doesn't need to be anything big. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It just needs to show, hey, something is going on, and we're doing a thing. And then with this, we also hook up a parameter for something in the material to make them vanish. And maybe like add a particle system as well. That's distinctly different from when they die, because that also makes them vanish with a particle system. That might actually still be a little too fast. Maybe like 45 is more like what we're looking for. Oh, that does give me a cool idea though. So what if the reappearing, like he bends forward a little bit? What if the reappearing does a little something like this, where he like does a flip and then extends his hands out to make like a front flip swipe attack at you? That could be kind of cool. And if we do that, we also don't need a left and a right variation, which honestly doesn't really matter that much. That's not the difficult part here to implement. But that's a cool idea. I kind of like that. The only thing is that there does need to be enough of like a tell and enough time to register in a player's mind that, hey, this thing is now reappearing in my vicinity, and then like run or dash away before the actual attack happens. So we can't have him just like do a front flip attack all within like 10 frames while he's also reappearing. So there needs to be a little bit of a reappearing anticipation move, which I suppose like just him reappearing. Nah. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a difficulty with the fairness of an attack like that. But I do really like the ID, so I'm going to do something with that ID. I just need to let it marinate a little bit and think about, okay, we're going to do something in that direction along those lines. The question is just how exactly are we going to accomplish that? And I think the answer is it's probably best not to try to answer that right away today. Because I just came up with the ID. And IDs are usually best left to explore before committing to something, in my experience. So let's make this into an animation sequence. And we'll call this Reaper Vanish. Okay, so I've been live for about 2.5 hours almost, and what we did is we first fixed up some of the weight painting, which we're going to need to fix up a little bit more in a moment here. Matter of fact, actually, now that we have some time to kill anyway, maybe what I should do is I should go into object mode here, and I should say, hey, these vertices that we have up here, like all this, I would very much like my cursor to actually, or my scroll wheel rather, to actually work. So scale, and then please scale up, proportional editing. And then specifically in the, oh my god. So we scale in the Z, and we just scale this the fuck flat. Maybe we can actually even just straight up do this. And then I pull that down a little more. Like this way, it's way less likely to clip through as much. Is my hope anyway. So let's see if we export this as FBX. We overwrite that. Takes a second. Going back into Unreal. Somewhere in here we have the basic Reaper. Skeletal mesh. This might fuck things up. It probably won't. Re-import. It's taking a while. We don't see any like changes here necessarily. I don't think. But if we go into, for instance, the left attack, there should be a lot less clipping through now. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better now. Like, let's just open up in the animations folder. Let's just open up like the right attack Reaper thing here. And just see how much further we can rotate this shit before it starts to actually like do any clipping. Like we have a lot of rotational freedom now, comparatively. So that's probably good. Now don't actually change what I did there, please. I think that's the right attack anyway. We need to reanimate that from ground up. Regardless, so that'll be fine. Okay, so going back real quick, we made this really cool mixed idle animation where we have 3 animations that are blending together to make this, which honestly I'm quite happy with this ID that I came up with. It's not like a novel idea. I'm not the first person to think of this, but this is the first time I'm like using animations in a way like this, where I'm blending them together to like make a output animation as such. And I really think that this works very well, having the up and down movement on an independent loop from the left to right movement, on an independent loop from the finger wiggle movement. That just feels like it's a little less looping, right? You can definitely, in a lot of other idle animations, you can feel the looping point, and to a certain extent, you have the same thing here, where it's the same movement over and over and over again. But it's not the same movement over and over and over again for the entire character at the same time. And I think that does help make it a lot more organic and break up the monotony a little bit. So I'm really happy with that. And then we also made this, this swipe attack that we just looked at. And this vanishing animation, which is really quite simple, but it does the trick. So I think we made some good progress here. Not as much as maybe we would have liked, but setting up the character rig itself took a little bit longer than expected. So I'll be back on either Monday or Tuesday, kind of depends, probably on Monday, doing either more animation or doing the programming for this character, which is mostly like programming one gameplay ability, and for the entirety of the rest, just copying over like the behavior tree from other enemies and slightly tweaking it. So hopefully everybody's got a good evening here, and I'm gonna go now. So thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you back on probably Monday.